There's a lot of questions by anglers out there about what type of plastic to use on a floating worm. Well, I'm going to go over 3 different ones today so you can choose the plastic that's best for your situation. Well, floating worms are a great way to catch bass in the spring, but they work all summer and fall as well. But this is the time of year when anglers really think about them. Well, there's different plastics that you could use out there, and I want to go over each of these and show you what they look like under the water so you can determine what is best for the fishery that you are on. Now, I should probably answer real quickly, when is the best time to use a floating worm? Like I said, you can use it all spring, summer, and fall, but for me in the spring, when I start to see life moving up shallow, if I see some panfish coming up shallow, and I see those first buck bass starting to come up shallow and roam around in that ultra skinny water, man, that's perfect for a floating worm. I can go ahead and flip it around brush or weeds or underhanging brush, whatever it might be, and I just know it is a very high percentage lure. As far as the equipment, I fished it on bait cast equipment a lot. As a matter of fact, I've done videos in the past on bait cast equipment, but spinning equipment gives you a nice option to really skip it underneath some brush, because those floating worms, they're very lightweight. So kind of choose what works best for you. The first one is the traditional plastic. Okay, this is what 99% of the plastics in your tackle selection are, and pretty much all of us have got this traditional type of plastic. Now, a lot of anglers are confused about floating worm and this type of plastic because it sinks. Well, most of the time it is fished weightless, so it does sink, and it sinks very slowly, and that's part of the appeal of using this type of plastic. Now, I should say, when I rig up a floating worm, there's a couple things that I do. One, I fish it on a swivel. Okay, I've got a leader, whether that is from braid to fluorocarbon or from a heavier monofilament or fluorocarbon main line, but I do use a swivel here, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, a floating worm can twist on you, which can cause all kinds of problems, and the barrel swivel will eliminate that. But the second reason is it also adds a little bit of weight to the nose of the lure, and then instead of sinking tail back, you'll see it starts to sink nose forward. So it changes the way the lure is going to drop in the water column. And depending on the length of the leader that you use, how far away that barrel swivel is from the actual bait, will change that sink rate. So those are some really excellent tips that a lot of great floating worm anglers have used over the years. The second thing you're probably going to notice is I have a kink here in the worm. It is offset. I don't want it to be perfectly straight. And you may be thinking, well, we always hear you want your worm or your plastic to be perfectly straight. In this situation, if you throw a little bit of a bend in there, that is going to allow you to get that really nice side-to-side action. Then you can pause it and leave the worm sink. So no matter what the floating worm is, I've really started to put that kink in there. So just put a little bit more plastic than you normally would when you're rigging up your Texas rig. Works really well. So as you can see with this traditional plastic worm, this finesse worm, it's got a nice sink rate to it, and there are some days when the bass are just going to obliterate it as it's falling down through the water column. That twitch side to side action will get their attention, but then on the sink is when they are going to hit it. Now, this second type of plastic, I'm not really sure what to call it. It's been around for many years through lots of different manufacturers, and it almost feels sponge-like. Okay, maybe if you dig around in Dad's tackle box or Grandpa's tackle box, you'll probably find some of these more traditional floating worms. Like I said, this one I've got here, I've had for probably 20 plus years, and you can still find them on the market today. Now, if you happen to know what this actual name of this plastic is, go ahead and drop a comment down below. But this is what your traditional floating worms in the past have been made of. And if you notice here, even with the hook in the front, the offset worm hook, and then with the barrel swivel up there, that tail just wants to sit right up there in that vertical position. Now this one that I filmed was with a longer leader. If you use a shorter leader, that tail's not going to sit up there and it's going to start to sink a little bit. Much different, a different sink rate than your traditional soft plastics that we showed you just a little bit ago. But this style of plastic is really nice if you want a slower sink rate, or like I said, if you use a little bit longer leader, you can get that tail to stand upright and just give it the slightest twitches and hold it in place. This last one that we're going to go over is your traditional Elastec plastic. Now if you notice here, I put a long leader on this one and look what the worm is doing. It is just sitting exactly right on top of the water. As a matter of fact, when I move the camera underneath and look almost straight up at it, you can kind of picture just the snake sitting there up on the surface. Give it some slight twitches and it just stays floating right there. Well, there are certain situations when this could be absolutely dynamite. I mean, if you've got some weeds that are just about up to the surface, if you've got some brush that's just about up to the surface, you can go ahead and just hold this right in position over the top of that cover and just twitch, 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 twitch. So if you see some bass that are starting to hold in certain positions in the shallows, this could be a really deadly technique. Now, if you put that leader a little bit shorter, it's going to stand more tail upright. So depending on the cover, depending on the structure, depending on the water clarity, what you have on your home lake, you've got 3 different choices for your plastics, and they've all got their place. But I really hope that you enjoyed seeing what each of them look like under the water. And if you would like to watch a video about a concept that changed my bass fishing forever, go ahead and check this one out right here. And hey, make sure you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.